man. Let me just check. Christina Carson, are you here? Christina and Leonore? Lenore? Yeah, okay. How about Giovanni? Ramos? Nicole Titus? All right, I had to take some attendance later before we end. All right, let's talk about the idea of a theory. When you think of theory, what kind of things come to your mind? Do you have any associations with theory?
I think of science.
Okay, you think of scientific theories.
Base knowledge or something?
Okay, base knowledge. Anybody else?
More like verbal instead of applied.
Okay, yeah, more talk, not action.
Yeah.
Maybe we could say.
Yeah.
All right.
Theoretical.
Theoretical, right? Theoretical.
And on base knowledge, like the application of.
Okay. Yeah, see, we're already starting to surface one of the issues that people think, well, that's just theory. You know, they put theory down and praise action is kind of some of the way things go.
Anytime you hear that it's a theory of anything, everybody thinks it's going to be the most boring thing on earth.
Yeah, right. The word theory means to look at. So it's not unrelated to being a spectator in a theater. So if you were to go back in Latin etymology of the word, it means to watch something and to try to figure it out. So a theory is, you might have a theory about the kinds of talk that help people to have good long-term relationships, for instance. You might watch people and you say, well, I'm watching how they talk to each other and they have a good relationship, so I think part of a good relationship means doing these kinds of things. Or I have a theory of breakup language. You know, I've watched people who are ending relationships, I watch what they do, and so now I have an understanding of what goes on. So behind a lot of this is to look at something with the goal of understanding it. Which means that you have a working knowledge of how things work together in it. So an understanding of it, for instance, do any of you write web pages or do internet stuff? You create websites, you do this kind of stuff. All right. In order to do that, it is very helpful for you to understand certain things, right? If you're going to write web pages, you can do it through a WYSIWYG, a what you see is what you get application, or you can know some HTML code. And when you know HTML code, when you understand what's going on in that web page, you have more power to shape the product. If all you have is, well, it lets me drag a box here and so forth and so on, but I really want this to happen, but I don't know how to do that because I don't understand what's going on. You know, I use Dreamweaver. I don't know if any of you use Dreamweaver. You switch back and forth between code view and design view. And there are times when you just can't make the design work out. So you switch to code view and you tinker with the HTML code because you understand what's going on. So understanding theories give you some understanding of what's happening so you have more power to influence the world to act in new ways. If those of you who do cars, you know, I don't know, very so often I have people who do cars, you know, and some people just drive cars, right? They fill it up with gas, they take it to the, other people understand cars. They understand that there's spark plugs and there's wires and there's air intakes and exhausts, and they have a lot of power because they can understand it and can do stuff with it. So understanding leads you to the power to do things. So just thinking of this from a PR perspective, you can do PR by the book. You know, there are books that say do this, you know, here's 5 steps to do when this happens. And that's like the WYSIWYG web programs. You know, you do it, but what happens if that doesn't work? You know, what happens if something unusual happens and this doesn't fit? Well, if you don't have any theories of what's going on, if you don't understand what's happening with people and media and culture, you're just like, well, I don't know, but I'm just going to do ding, 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 ding. And then you get hauled in front of a committee somewhere, and they say, this was a failure. What's the problem here? And you say, oh, excuse me, I followed the 5 steps. You know, well, I don't want you working for me if all you can do is follow 5 steps. I want you to understand what's going on and think, and switch between the design view and the code view, and get at it, and tweak it, and make it work. So you need understanding in order for that to happen. So theory is meant for you to look at what's going on. So here you have communication events. Let's just call it communication events. Things happen. You know, people talk to each other. Magazines go out, news broadcasts, blogs, communication events happen. Now, we have ordinary, everyday ways of talking about that. So you watch 2 people have a fight over something. You know, one says, well, you didn't tell me we were going to do this. And, well, I thought you understood that. And well, it's your fault. And they're blaming each other and yelling at each other. And the relationship gets damaged. You know, so you want, that's an event. And we have ordinary ways of talking about that. We say, oh, he's a hothead, or oh, she doesn't have any patience, or, you know, we have ways we talk about it. But a theory, a person who's thinking about theory looks at it again and says, are our ordinary ways of doing this adequate? Is there another way I could look at this? Are there other things that might be going on? So what comm theory tries to do is to get away from everyday ordinary things and ask new questions, deeper questions. Is there some other perspective that might be more useful and open up some new insights? So the theory begins to shape it. That leads to criticism. So we say, no, I don't think that's exactly what's going on. I think there's something else going on. It leads to alternative perspectives. You know, what I really think is what was going on was that this person was thinking about what they were going to tell their friend about this conversation, so they had to say that because they were going to talk to their friend about it. Well, that's another way of looking at it. So you have alternative perspectives that in our field become hypotheses. You say, I think this is going on, which then leads to research. So 2 folks were in research last semester here. You do research to figure out, is my theory, does it work? Does it hold up with empirical evidence? When I test it in real life, does it pan out? Is it verifiable? Is it valid? And then research feeds into dealing with communication events. So at root, communication studies is a highly practical field. We have all kinds of communication issues in our world that we need to be dealing with. You know, I read this report. I don't know how many of you read this report about the suicide rate among teenage girls. Anybody read the report? Yeah. Girls between the ages of 10 and 19. The suicide rate is up 41% among girls ages 10 to 19.
It's also because, like, even though the rate of was among girls, it's also been among boys that age too.
It's been up, but not as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not as much. And
41% of who?
it's up, the rate of suicide is up 41% from what it was. So it's half again as much.
Over what period of time?
I don't have all the details of the report, but recently, you know.
Why did someone kill themselves at 10 years old?
Good question, you know. And my question is, how is communication part of that? Because you're 10 years old, you're in a family, you've got friends, and what I know about people and stuff is that a lot of these things are related to how communication works for people.
Britney Spears syndrome.
Yeah, well, okay. But then, and people bullying and people making fun of and ridiculing, and that's with the school shootings. You know, they've done a profile, they've done an extensive profile now about the Virginia Tech guy and all this kind of stuff. And it has a lot to do with social isolation, which is a comm issue for us. It's a communication issue. How do people talk to each other? What skills do people need to have positive social relationships? So we have a lot of comm issues going on. You know, I mean, we're dealing internationally with comm issues. How do we talk to other cultures? How do we create negotiations that lead to a livable planet? You know, so we have a lot of comm issues. So ordinary ways of working on it sometimes work, sometimes don't. Theory asks, let's really look at this. Let's look at kids, you know, 10-year-old girls and what is happening to them, what kind of relationships are going on, and what's going on there. How do they talk? Do they need skills for different relationships? What's going on with these social isolate guys who become violent? What's going on internationally with negotiations? And we try alternative perspectives, we create hypotheses, we do research, and we affect what's going on. We try to get in on it. So you're going to meet the name of Robert Craig along the way here. We're going to talk about Bob Craig, who designed the 7 traditions that are in this book. This is his scheme for theories. And Bob Craig is at University of Colorado at Boulder. He is convinced that communication scholarship must get itself re-engaged with society, because we have a lot to say about this kind of stuff, and we better get to say in it. So Barnett Pierce, who I mentioned before with coordinated management of meaning, is a person who's done that. He's taken his theory and he has created a whole consulting history where he has gone to community after community and tried to make a difference in the way that community dealt with major conflict. So Barnett Pierce is a good example of this. He's going to be at the SCA conference in Chicago in November. I'm hoping I can see him, hear him there, but I'll see. Anyway, so this is the thing. Theory looks at it to create understanding and has 4 goals. So we're going to talk about 4 goals. Theory tries to describe what's happening. So whenever you try to describe, okay, so this person said this to this person, and then this person said that to that person, you're into theory. You're taking a look at it, you're trying to figure it out. So you describe it, and then you're going to explain. So you say, okay, let me tell you what happened. So this is like your application logs. You're going to say, okay, this happened at work. This person said these things, this person said this person said this, then this happened in the sentence. You describe it and you explain. So what was going on was that, and then you give your explanation. He was having a bad day, she was tired, it was a long shift, she had worked a double shift. Whatever your explanation is, that's your theory. That's your look at it and your understanding of what's going on. The third thing theory does is it predicts. So you get a communication theory and you say, all right, I'm going to predict that the next time she works a double shift and the next time he's tired, this is going to happen again. You know, I'm going to predict that you set up these conditions and these same communication things will happen. And then the fourth thing, you can say different ways. I'm going to use this word, transform, is what theory is meant in the end to do. Is to say, all right, if I know that when she works a double shift and he's, got a quarterly report to turn in, because I can predict what's going to happen, I will intervene and I will transform this situation. I will change it. Some people use the word control here. I don't like to use the word control on that because it implies that it's like, a mechanical thing. You turn that button up and that knob and it's all going to work out. It doesn't work that way. People are not machines. But you can change what's going on. So Barnett Pierce tries to take his theory of changing the way people talk to each other to transform what happens in community debates about moral issues, about sensitive issues. So 4 things. So anytime someone asks you, or I ask you, or someone says, well, what is theory all about? You say, well, what it's about is describing, explaining, predicting, and transforming what happens in communication.
And this is Bob Craig?
No, this one is pretty standard.
Standard?
Yeah, but Craig is very much on this part. Bob Craig is pushing the field. He's been president of like the national associations, and he's pushing the field. Get practical, make a difference in what's happening in communities, in the world situation. Use your theory to transform what's going on. We'll talk about this when we talk about postmodernism and post-postmodernism, things like that. So there's just a quick shot for you at what theory is and why theory does not have to be just about talk. Oh, that's just theory. Well, whatever that is, that's not theory. Because theory is about figuring it out so you can do something about it. So all the theories we have, we will be pushing the question of application, action, transformation. What can you do with this? How does it change your public relations practice? How does it change the way you write your things, the symbols you use in your things? How does it reshape that? I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, this was a long time ago here, I taught a graduate course in communication theory. And I had a student who worked in news in New York City. And her job was to run to the video room. This tells you how long ago that was, right? Run to the video room when a news report was being constructed and grab some footage to go over the news report. And it was at the time when it was the Israeli-Palestinian thing was going on, big deal. So we would talk about that, and she would run to the video room, and she would just grab some footage, and then she would run back and put it up. And so the footage that you see, you were seeing in news reports, was a hurried intern running over and grabbing something. But what effect did that video have, and the choice of that video, and the choice of this video over that video, right? And so she almost couldn't do her job after that, because every time she ran to the video room, she thought, what will the effect be now on public opinion because I grabbed this video instead of that video? So she began to think very carefully about the effect of her communication behavior on social reality. So that was pretty interesting. I probably ruined her career, But in any case, she started to think about what am I doing, and how is it affecting national policy, because I'm running and grabbing something here. So she thought about that. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of theory. Any thoughts or questions about this?
Well, you can definitely see how it applies to everyday life.
Well, hopefully, because you communicate all the time.
A million things.
Yeah, right. Then that's the way you should go. You should be thinking, oh, there's a million things we could think about, we could look at and try to understand, right, what's going on.
For predicts, could you describe that again?
All right, so theory predicts. So there's a theory called agenda setting theory, for instance, that says news media don't tell people what to think, but it tells people what to think about. It's a theory of media. That it predicts that whatever shows up in the first screen of Google News, or in the first 10 minutes of the news show, will be what people are talking about the next day. So that's a predictive theory.
So it's more in a specific context for that situation? I mean,
Well, every theory. I mean, if I have a theory of interpersonal relationship that says people get to know each other progressively by the sharing of more intimate information about each other. So they test the waters, and then they share a little more, and then they test the waters, share a little more. So I can predict that when two people get together, I can observe this happening. I will see them beginning to share progressively more personal information over time. And if someone violates that by immediately throwing in something that's incredibly super personal, I can predict that there's going to be a disruption going on in that relationship. Now, you know this. I mean, you think, yeah, of course. Does that take a theory? No, it doesn't take a theory. But the theories go into it much more deeply and give you language to describe that. What's going on? Did you have a question? Okay. Did you?
I was going to say a very easy way to look at it is I think we've all been in this situation where we've had to confront somebody about something.
Yeah.
And you know in your mind what you're confronting them about. And you can almost predict their reaction to what you're going to say. And a lot of times, if you have something unpleasant to tell somebody,
Right.
okay, you can almost predict that they're not going to like it. But sometimes they throw a monkey wrench into it, and the thing, that's where the tweaking comes in. Like, in other words, you thought it was going to go one way, they react in a totally different way, and you have to flip it into a different gear because it didn't go exactly the way you thought it was going to go.
Okay. So yeah. So you're talking about what you're talking about is kind of coordinated management, meaning speech act theory that says, all right, at this point, it could go this way, or this way. So I predict that if it goes this way, I will be best served by doing this. If it goes this way, I'll be best served by doing that. Yeah. I mean, one of the big predictions that is so easy to make about human behavior in systems theory is that when two people have a conflict, they will draw in others. When two people have a fight, they will find a third person to try to deal with that. A triangle, it's called a triangle. That people don't deal with each other about conflicts. They go to someone else and try to bring that person into it. It's a very strong prediction in systems theory about human behavior and conflict. So you know that's going to happen. And you try then, so transformative is you say, look, if you go into this, you're having a conflict with another person, and you're bringing in all these other people, that's only going to make it harder to resolve. So you say, if you want to change this to you want to create some peace, you need to deal directly with the person you're having a problem with, instead of bringing in others. So there's the transformative dimension of the theory that says conflict will be best served when people deal productively, when they learn how to deal with each other directly. And so if I'm an organizational consultant, I try to give people the skills to address directly the conflicts they're having with other people. I try to teach them iMessages. I try to teach them ways to avoid creating defensiveness and all these things. So there. So that's about that. All right. So let me give you one. Well, what time is it? 4. Okay. Good. We got time. All right. Any more questions about this? All right. Let's just quick.
I have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
How does communication studies differ from the behavioral sciences in looking at events? Because couldn't you say that all behaviors are communication events?
Yes. Which is why rhetoric was called the queen of the sciences for many years. before it got relegated to political speech. Yeah, so the question is here, you know, psychology, sociology, anthropology, all talk about human behavior. They all study human behavior. So what's the deal with comm studies? You know, where do we come into the picture? So one way to say it, we'll just call it psychology, sociology, anthropology. One way to look at it is that communication studies is an overarching discipline, because we are dealing with phenomena that happen in all of those fields, which means that there's a give and take of theories. So we borrow psychology theories, we borrow sociology theories, we borrow anthropology, ethnographic methods in our field. The particular thing we are interested in is in the message or the symbols that are shared. So we are, the way meaning is created through sharing messages. So where we're different from a psychologist is we would try to not necessarily, and we'll talk about this, some theories get into the brain and how does the brain process information and all that stuff. We're primarily interested in how's the message exchange working here? How is meaning being created back and forth? So we're focused on messages. That's the key difference for us. I mean, in the history of communication studies, this is the way it was kind of in the golden age of communication studies, when rhetoric was studied by everyone who went to university. It was a core study to study Aristotle's theory of rhetoric and think about human communication, political communication, community deliberation. What happened was it got, if you study history, it got relegated to pretty speech. So rhetoric or communication studies for a while became the study of excessively flowery speeches, you know, so it kind of got limited to that. And then as the universities developed the scientific method, because at root, the study of communication is kind of a humanistic discipline. It's more like English and more like poetry and things like that, because it studies language a lot. But there came a time in the university process of forming universities where science became the big thing. So you had to have a scientific method to your discipline. And these people were just looking at speeches and talking about them. So they kind of got pushed to the side, and psychology and sociology and anthropology, who had scientific methods, you know, got funding in the university. So it's been a long climb for communication studies to come back. And we're just starting to come back as a field after this, because we've developed theories and you know, rational scientific approaches to things. But for a long time we were relegated to a low position. But I think we're realizing more and more that communication studies has a lot to offer to the social world, to the events that are happening. And if people can't talk, they fight. So it'd be much better to talk. So that was a little side. So that's how it relates. We are particularly interested in the question of messages, symbols, and the exchange that goes on. How does that work? All right. Now, when you read your chapters, I am going to ask questions when we come back to class. I'm going to ask 3 questions. I'm going to ask, what was it about? What were the main ideas? And what would you do with it? So these are 3 questions that you should be able to answer about every chapter that you have read. And what will happen is I will pick a name at random off the roster and ask these questions. Okay, so it's not like raise your hand who wants to answer this question.